USCIS does allow. It's inconsistent. Depends on the officer,
Right.
but the telephonic aspect. But that I'll still go in person if I can, because there's some value in just being there and
Oh yeah, no,
and
trust me, as a former adjudicator, it makes all the difference to have an attorney in the room, because the questions are different, the attitude is different. Even if you end up being the plant in the corner where you don't really say anything because everything is going smoothly, you want your client to walk out of there going, I'm sorry, why did I just pay you? Like, what did you do? And it's like your presence is the weight in the room.
yeah.
And officers, not always, often intimidated or angry about lawyers, but that's okay, because then you're doing your job, because all you're trying to do is make sure that they toe the line, and they are more likely to do that if you're in the room. So, which is another reason why I insist on going in person if at all possible. Although I've had situations where I went in person and they put me in the parking lot to do telephonically, because they were like, well, we can only have 3 people in the room, including the adjudicator, which means the couple, the adjudicator and me. And so I'm just like, okay, well, do you foresee any problems? It's like, I'll run through the case really quick with the officer first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll sit in the parking lot and listen in on the interview. But so far things have been.
What offices was this?
It was an officer in Santa Ana. I don't remember her name.
Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing was that she kept telling my client, I don't know why you needed an attorney. And I was like, she would not have said that if I was sitting in the room. I found it to be somewhat offensive, but that also told me that she was gearing to grant.
Yeah.
Was a good feel, but it was so funny because like my clients came out and was like, why did she keep? I was like, I don't know, whatever. Point is, you're being granted. Okay, who cares? Who cares? That what my the important thing is that you're being granted. So.
And one thing I tell clients is a lot of what we do is psychological. One is to keep the application in order and clean, because I've seen what people send on their own, and it's just it's just frustrating reading stuff that doesn't make sense, sometimes not organized. So that it's not even law necessarily; it's just keeping it pretty and clean. And the interview too is just keeping things organized. And the power balance gets shifted by being in there. I have been going to interviews recently, and I went on Monday, went on Friday in Los Angeles, and then last week in Chatsworth. I was there twice. What's interesting is I used to see lawyers there all the time with their clients, but in the last couple times I've been there, it's been packed, and I've been like the only lawyer in the waiting room, which is surprising. A lot of people are not taking lawyers to their interviews.
Well, it's also the lawyers are arranging to get telephonic appearances, but the problem with that is, like you said, it's extremely inconsistent, and it's really, honestly, it's officer based. It's not like Chatsworth has this blanket, policy or whatever. And I actually went on behalf of a friend of mine to an interview because the first time the officer refused to call the attorney.
Wow.
And then proceeded to badger the client like throughout the entire interview. And so when I went there, the officer was it was a different officer that time. It was like the officer was surprised that I was there. And I was like, well, considering how the first interview went, because she refused to call the attorney, hint, maybe you need to talk to her. It made all the difference. And then like a month later, we got an approval. So, mission accomplished. Right. And so it's so inconsistent right now. And you roll the dice, and then it becomes what your client thinks happened versus what actually happened versus what the officer writes down happened.
Clients has no idea what's going on, and sometimes we go to interviews, and I gotta say, most of the time when I go to USCIS interviews, the officers are great, and so like I'll say 90+%, but you get that one that's terrible, and it ruins people's lives. So that's why it's really bad. But they'll be like, "Oh, on your form I-485, you said this." The client's like, "What? Who? I-480 who?" Like you gotta kind of like make it known we're used to these numbers, and that's kind of like, I guess when you're in private practice, you have to deal with people on a one-on-one basis. So you're used to saying, adjustment of status is when you apply for a green card, a petition is this, but they're just throw it out there, and it confuses the hell out of clients. They look at me, and I'm like, okay, that's the green card application. What'd you say here?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the officer too sometimes acts kind of weird in the sense that, like, I had one officer who asked the exact same question 3 times, 3 different ways.
Yeah.
And the answer was no. So the client started to get confused. Like, does this person know something that I don't know? Because I keep saying no, and she keeps bringing up the same question.
Yeah.
And So it became extremely uncomfortable because my client like started to basically devolve in the sense that like she just became more and more agitated because she just could not figure out why this officer just kept asking, like, she's like, I'm sorry, did I commit a crime and I just don't know about it? Because like she just kept asking about the crime, about like, have you ever committed a crime? No. Okay, well, you know, what crimes have you committed? What? And then the third time, I was like, I'm sorry, is there something that we need to know? You know, I mean, it was so strange. And she's like, no, I'm just going through the questions. And I'm like, okay.
It does happen sometimes where they'll pull out like, you know, CP records, say you had like entry on this day you didn't say or something. That's why they keep asking to try to catch you in a lie. But like most of the time, I mean, the clients have told us we know what the situation is. You're like, why do you keep asking this? And it's just like an error on the paperwork or something like that.
That's I've had situations where clients, like particularly Korean clients, will have the same name.
Yeah.
And then you get the unfortunate situation, rare, but it does happen, same name, same date of birth. And since they all come from Korea, right, it turned into this situation where they got really confused because there was this whole section of all these entries and exits because the other person was a nurse, but she had no intention of living here. It was obvious, you know, she had a bunch of petitions, but it was tacked on to my client. And so they're like, are you sure you've never been here before? And the woman didn't even go to college, much less was a nurse. Okay. Yeah. So then she was like, I'm really confused. You know, what are you talking about? And then so I did a FOIA of her record. And then I realized they had tacked on the same person.
Wow.
You know, and well, you know, they had tacked on somebody's same name, same date of birth, different parents, different, like there were indicators.
Yeah.
You know, the officer just, you know, kind of rolled with it. And and then we had to sort it out later. It turned out to be okay, but it was strange. It was really strange.
Yeah, it's messy. You just never know because you get one officer that doesn't want to listen, and then it's like file appeal or like ombudsman's involved, and then the congressperson. It's just like all of a sudden 5 hours of work is piled on that you weren't expecting.
Exactly, to something that should have taken 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked into interviews like this is a slam dunk case, you know, and whatever, and then the officer brings something up, and I look at my client sheepishly looks at me, and I'm like, oh, okay. All right. We just tacked on like 3 more hours of work. This is going to be awesome, you know?